of God, giving our lives, everything that is under our control, everything that we've been given to steward as our choices, the things that we have power over. He is asking us to come over to God, because this is true and proper worship. This is what worship is, giving the things that we've already been handed over to by God, the things that He's given you choice over, the things He has given you authority over. These things He's asking you to give them to Him, that He may guide you, that He may show you how to use them, that He may show you when and where to do this. This is the worship that God asks of us. He is our creator. He has given us a lot of things. He has given us the authority to choose for ourselves. He's given us the intelligence. He has given us a lot of things, but He's asking, out of God's mercy, the writer is asking us, out of God's mercy, let's make the choice. He's pleading us to make the choice to pick up our cross. I want to read a verse from Mark chapter 8 so that you can understand that illustration of picking up our cross. I want to read from Mark chapter 8 verse 34. Whoever wants to be my disciple must deny themselves and take up their cross and follow me. I want you to also notice something. He didn't say whoever wants to be my son, whoever wants to be my son, or whoever wants to be a believer, or whoever wants to be a new creation. No, he says whoever wants to be my disciple, whoever wants to follow. To disciple is to follow. Whoever wants to follow my example. And remember, God came here, Christ came here, that He may set an example for us. And He's asking, whoever wants to follow my example must deny themselves and take up their cross and follow me. So when I'm talking about the decision to worship, it's a decision to pick up the cross. It is a decision to pick up the cross and worship God. That is the worship that God requires of us, the worship of our lives. It's a different worship than that of song, because that one it goes to show the majesty of God, in the sense that He has authority and power down to those that He controls. Worship is just revealing that God has power. Worship is telling God, or showing, doing actions, or telling God of how He has power, showing that He has power. And that one of why we are being called on to pick up our cross, because it's a show of God's power over us. It's a show of His authority here on earth, in our lives, in those He created. It reciprocates praise. It reciprocates worship back to the heavens, because this is the example that Christ came to give us as His people, as His children. This is the example that He brought for us here on earth. He came to show us that you can live a life void of your own desires, a life that is not just about you, that every moment of your life you're not just looking to satisfy your needs, you're not just looking to satisfy the needs of your body or the needs of those that are around you. You can live a life that accomplishes all things, accomplishes greatness here on earth, but above all these things, it worships God. Yani, you can be successful, you can be able to do so many great things, but above all, you're being able to do these things in worship of God. And this is the example He brought for us as He was coming down to live a life here on earth as a human, as Jesus Christ. And as we move on, I want us to realize that if we are going to worship, if we are going to live by worship, it requires humility, it requires obedience. Because this is the point, living by worship is hard for everyone, because it needs for you to have one thing, to have that humility where you put your desire, you put your plan second to God's, second to what God is asking you to do, second to what He has shared with us in His word. It calls for us to be humble, to be able to place ourselves beneath God's will. Yani what we want na kenye tunataka for our lives, everything that we want for ourselves, for the people we love, for the people that are around us, it's second to what he has said. Yani putting him with importance in our lives, with first priority in every place we go. Whenever, it doesn't matter. You know, God is not, he created us all-rounded. He created us with so many aspects of ourselves, because we have, as much as you're one thing, you're also another. As much as you're, for example, as much as you might be a Christian, you might be you're also a businessman, or maybe, for example, maybe you are working at an office, or maybe you're still in school. So as much as you are a student, you are still a son of Christ. You're still, and that's the revelation that Christ brought to us, that we can be all these things in him. We can be the people he's called us to be. You can be that teacher you want to be. You can be that doctor you want to be. You can be that engineer you want to be. You can be that businessman. You can be that person you are created to be. You can be that person in God. It doesn't matter where you are right now. Every place you are can be used to worship God. Wherever he has placed you right now. I'm talking of where you are right now. Maybe you are that doctor, maybe you're that student, maybe you're going through a stage of your life when you're still trying to figure these things out, and you're still trying to figure out what his purpose is. He's saying you can do all of that in him. There's no place where you say, like, this is where God ends and this is where I start figuring out my life. This is where God's authority ends and this is where I start being a teacher. This is where authority ends and this is where I start being a doctor. This is where his authority ends and this is where I start being a youth. This is where I start being a student. It doesn't matter. God is all-rounded. God is all-powerful. In every area, he has the wisdom, he has the understanding, and he's asking us to incorporate him, to worship him in these areas. And I want us to look at a text in John. And we're going to look at a text in John 23. Yet a time is coming and has now come, meaning we are living in that time. Yet a time is coming and has now come when the true worshippers will worship the Father in spirit and in truth, for they are the kind of worshippers the Father seeks. God is spirit. His worshippers must worship in spirit and in truth. All these things that we're discussing right now, living for God, living by worship, as we are doing these things, we cannot do it by our own strength. We need to acknowledge that. As we have been told, God is spirit. If he is to be worshipped, he is to be worshipped by spirit. You cannot do all these things we are talking about. You cannot pick up the cross and follow Christ. You cannot do all these actions of worship without his spirit, without the Holy Spirit guiding you. The Holy Spirit is our guide. He's our strength. He's our wisdom. He's our everything. In the moment of worship, he is there. He's the one who makes it come to pass. He's the one who is the beauty of the worship, because he's the one. Remember, the Holy Spirit is God. In that moment, he gives you strength. In that moment, he guides you on what action to take. And so in this action of living by worship, it is impossible without the Spirit. And that's just what I want to share with you. And I want to also show you another revelation in the text. Yet a time is coming and has now come when the true worshippers will worship. He didn't say that when the true Christians. He said when the true worshippers. He didn't say when the true sons will worship. He said when the true worshippers will worship. Why is he emphasizing on worshippers? Why is the text emphasized on the word worshippers? What's this word trying to show us? What is it about? What is it trying to reveal to us? There are so many words he would have placed there, but there's a word of choice. That's a word of choice. He placed the word there, worshippers, for a reason. He's telling us that those, I want us to replace as we move on, since we've learned that worship is living for God, or living a life, or giving up our bodies and giving up our desires for God. That is worship. And I want us to replace that with the word worship with the word worshippers, because this is what defines a worshipper. We want to replace that with worshippers in the text and see what it reveals to us. Yet a time is coming and has now come when true worshippers, true people, people who are willing to give up their desires, people who are willing to give up their bodies and their plans, their ideologies, their ways of thinking, who are willing to give up these things, will worship the Father in spirit and in truth. He was talking of a time that is come, that has come now that he was on earth, when people would give themselves up in worship of him in truth and in spirit, in the sense that the act of worshiping, the act of living by worship, the act of living a life that worships him, that ability, it comes from the Spirit. And he was telling us that now that Christ was saying that now that he has come to earth, that time has come. That time, he was saying a time will come and has come. Now he was saying that now that he is here, the time